I'm here with Christine Squires, President and CEO of Americares. A lot of you probably know Americares. They're a global nonprofit focused on health and development for individuals affected by poverty, disaster, and crisis. Christine, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for having me.
It's absolutely a pleasure. Last year, I had the opportunity to connect with another member of your team shortly after the invasion in Ukraine. At that time, we had no idea what we were facing and how long it was going to go on. Now, a year later, which is hard to believe, the battle in Ukraine continues to intensify. So what has the past year looked like at Americares specifically in focusing on Ukraine, and how has the team adapted to meet emerging needs?
Sure. Yes. Thanks, Kevin. It's hard to believe it's almost going to be a year on February 23rd. So at the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Americares launched a response immediately, providing urgently needed medicines, medical supplies, and also emergency funding to meet both the physical and mental health needs of children and adults affected by the crisis. There's still a critical need for medicines and relief supplies. And just to give you some examples of what those are, which actually haven't changed from the start: antibiotics, IV fluids, wound care supplies, labor and delivery supplies, and trauma kits. So our emergency response team, who is based in Krakow, Poland, they've been working around the clock to get the shipments into Ukraine. We've sent 300 tons so far of medicines and relief supplies. Which is a lot. And the team's been adapting and shifting as we know what the needs are, and as we continue to forge additional partnerships inside Ukraine to get the medicines and medical supplies needed most. We're also partnering with local organizations, a dozen organizations, providing mental health support to those who are affected by the war and the humanitarian crisis. So just to give you a couple of stats there, we supported over 1,000 clinicians who've been trained in therapy techniques and recovery techniques for children experiencing war-related trauma. And I know you've seen the stories, and families separated, and then supported more than 17,000 individual crisis intervention sessions from displaced people and refugees who need emergency support. And that's anything from, we see suicidal behavior, anxiety, depression, acute stress, and PTSD. So going forward, I'm sure as you'll get to, but the need is still there, and we're going to continue to support these local organizations and provide medicines and medical supplies where they're needed most.
Well, appreciate your commitment to the people of Ukraine, and I know that you're making a big difference. I mean, the numbers that you shared, just staggering, and hundreds of tons of medical supplies. And that was one of the really interesting things when we connected last year, was even the plans for mental health, of kind of knowing, hey, this is going to have long-term effects on people, and they're really going to need us. And so I'm curious, as you think about, what the team has seen, boots on the ground in Ukraine over the past year, how does that compare to some of the other kind of large-scale events that your team has historically responded to? And how are you tracking and responding to those needs?
Sure. I mean, in terms of the support we're receiving for this crisis, this is a large-scale ongoing event. We have received from the beginning really good support from our donors and the new donors from the onset of the crisis. So we're able to meet the immediate needs of children and adults who are affected by the crisis. And, in terms, I mean, you can talk about what the needs are going forward, but comparatively, I mean, this is a war. This is going to be a protracted situation. Americares has been working and partnering with organizations in this area for decades. We also know that when we see these protracted crises, that the needs are going to continue. They're going to continue to shift and change, and with our experience and our local partnerships, we plan on meeting those needs, and everyone needs additional support to be able to meet those needs.
Absolutely. And you think about just kind of the compounding nature of other crises, right? So of the pandemic, and, even on the day that we're recording this, right, just news coming out of Turkey and Syria. And so I'm just curious as to, like, organizationally, how do you respond where there's just so many different kind of things that are reaching and pulling? Yeah. Where you may or may not be kind of internationally?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I mean, and there always are mounting crises. One is we'll respond where we know we can make a difference, where we know that we have thousands of partners all over the world. But we know we've had long-term partnerships. We know we've been on the ground. We know the situation, and we know we can provide a value add. So for instance, for Americares, we often focus on providing medicines and medical supplies. We have over 40 years of history of being able to do that and knowing how to get, we're logistics experts, supplies near where they're needed most. Mental health and psychosocial support, as we talked about earlier, is something we know that, that's a long-term need, especially as you're thinking of whether it's an earthquake or a war. The trauma that the communities are going through or something that should not be overlooked. So we don't just deal with the physical, we deal with the mental health needs there. How we decide is, one is we actually do have a roster of people that we can pull from who live all over the world, so we can scale up quickly when there's a disaster. So we don't keep a large staff on, but we do have experts, whether they're clinical experts or logistics experts, who can help us when we need to scale up. So we do make choices very strategically, and we realize that we can't be all things to all people.
No, and I think that that's beautiful that you're really harnessing partnership, right? In that you're relying on people that that are there and they're able to connect and get that feedback from the people, that they can actually say what it is that they need versus you have some smaller organizations who maybe will guess and say, hey, we need to do a coat drive or we need to do a stroller drive. But when you're actually there and saying, no, these people really need medicine,
exactly,
and actually able to respond to that. And certainly, the other connected item to this is just kind of proven track record, is that when I connect with other individuals in the media and individual donors, and it's a matter of, where do you give? And it's to say, give to the people that have the infrastructure, that have a proven track record of being able to deliver on this. And certainly that's something that Americares has been doing for quite some time.
Well, thank you. Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth, but yes, it is. It's about, having these partnerships, understanding what the local needs are. So we always want to do an assessment of what's needed, rather than jump in and say, here's what I think you need. And there also are, with our years of experience, consistent needs. We always know that these certain things are going to be needed in a crisis situation, like some of the items I mentioned before.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly we have donors that'll be tuning in. Some of them are very familiar and probably support Americares, and others that may need some encouragement to continue to support the work that you all are doing, and specifically helping the people of Ukraine as we come up on a year. What would you say to those individuals that maybe they're pulled in a lot of different directions of different emerging crises that have popped up, to really focus on long-term and midterm support of the war in Ukraine?
Yeah. Well, first I say thank you to individuals who always want to help, and that's so appreciated. I'd say make sure you're donating to a qualified relief organization, Kevin, like you said, that has experience and a dedicated team. You can, obviously, this better than I, Kevin, but Charity Navigator is a great place to do some research. A lot of people actually have heard of Americares when they've done a search during a crisis situation on Charity Navigator, looking to who to support, because we have a 4-star rating, which is the highest rating we can have. It shows that we're fiscally responsible, where it's transparent, and you can be sure that your donation is going to the best place where it needs to be. And also, to make a donation for Americares, you can learn more about who we are. You can go to americares.org, and we've got a lot of information about the work we've done and crisis situations and every day on there.
Fantastic. Well, Christine, it was an absolute pleasure connecting with you. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for so many around the world.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the time.
Take care now.
Take care.